Returning with them in SpaceX Dragon Freedom is actually more than 300 pounds of cargo and important data that will impact our understanding of human physiology on Earth and on orbit.
As of right now, we can see AX2 crew are in their suits, in their seats. They're continuing to follow progress on their tablets and the display screen above their head. We have an anticipated loss of signal coming up in about 12 minutes, a little bit, almost 13 minutes. Or excuse me, that LOS will occur in 6 minutes, and we expect that to last for 7 minutes total. And we have an anticipated splashdown time of 8:04 p.m. Pacific, 11:04 p.m. Eastern Time. So up next will be that communications blackout period. This happens every crew mission that we have as they re-enter the Earth's atmosphere. The exterior of the capsule works really hard to, basically it's encountering a lot of friction as it is re-entering the Earth's atmosphere, and that actually helps the capsule slow down significantly before we deploy the parachutes. Now, the suits that you see them wearing now, they are fully customized and fitted for each crew member. We can see their visors are now down in the locked position.
And SpaceX Dragon crew entry prep is complete.
Copy that, Dragon. We see your visors are down, restraints are secure, and satchels are also secure. 5 minutes to expected LOS. We will see you on the other side at 0258 Zulu.
0258 Zulu.
Good readback.
Now, for those of you that have been following along, you know that the visors come down for the more dynamic parts of the flight, which of course would be, re-entry would be considered one of those. Those helmets that they have are actually 3D printed, which is, personally, I think, pretty awesome. The outer layer of the spacesuit is flame resistant. They wear hearing protection, both during ascent and re-entry. And you know, the spacesuits look good, but more importantly, they keep the crew safe through all phases of the flight. Now, as we mentioned before, we are targeting a splashdown off the Gulf Coast of Florida near Panama City. Expected splashdown time is 11:04 p.m. Eastern, 8:04 p.m. Pacific. So that's coming up here in just over 16 minutes. The next thing we have coming up in about 3 minutes is the anticipated loss of signal, or LOS, as we hear it referred to on comms. That's a live view of SpaceX Mission Control here in Hawthorne, California.
AX-2 is Axiom's second mission with SpaceX, and there are two more planned, AX-3 and AX-4, who will also be in SpaceX vehicles. Back at Axiom headquarters, Michael Lopez Alegria, our chief astronaut, is our commander for AX-3, and he is already in training. Mike Lopez Alegria, also known as MLA. And so the AX-3 mission is already underway.
So we're now coming up to the anticipated loss of signal, or LOS. Once again, this is expected to last for 7 minutes. All right, so at this point, we are entering the communications blackout period, or LOS, loss of signal. This will last for 7 minutes due to plasma formation around the exterior of the spacecraft. During this time, no vehicle telemetry is received by mission control or the recovery team, and no external commanding of the vehicle or voice communication is possible. As a reminder, Dragon is designed to fly itself and continues to autonomously use Draco thrusters to orient itself during the reentry phase. During reentry, the vehicle will be slowing down from orbital velocity, which is about 17,500 miles per hour, and it will basically continue to decrease a lot of that deceleration occurring during this atmospheric reentry. And then the top temperature for Dragon, as I said earlier, exterior temperatures reach about 3,500 degrees Fahrenheit. So the crew remains comfortable as we are flowing nitrox, cool nitrox air, both into their suits as well as into Dragon's interior cabin. So while it gets toasty on the outside, and we will see the evidence of that once we get lights shining on Dragon and it's lifted up onto the deck of our recovery vessel, Megan, we will actually be able to see the ablative material on the exterior of the capsule. It'll have some charring on it, which is a good indication that it worked.
I like to call them toasted marshmallows. That's the kind of brown patina it reminds me of.
So once again, we are in the anticipated communications blackout period. We have about 4 minutes remaining. Total runtime for this blackout period is 7 minutes, so we're roughly about halfway through. In previous crew returns, we have sometimes regained communication faster than expected, so probably in a couple minutes we might hear SpaceX Core Michael Blasco start hailing the crew to see if we can regain those communications. Now, our first views of Dragon, hopefully we'll be able to bring them to you soon, but they will be the thermal cameras that will be tracking Dragon's reentry. If you live on the Gulf Coast, it should be visible, streaking across the night sky. Once again, we have an anticipated splashdown time of 11:04 p.m. Eastern, so about 10 minutes from now. Now at about 18,000 feet in altitude, the drogue parachutes will deploy. And after that, around 6,000 feet altitude, we will have the main parachute deployment. And there's our first live view of Dragon Freedom with the Axiom 2 crew. This is coming from one of our thermal tracking cams. I believe this might actually be the WB plane, the WB-57 plane from NASA. This is a thermal imaging tracking cam. About 2 minutes remaining until we have an anticipated until when we anticipate being able to restore communications with the crew. Once again, the buildup of plasma on the outside of the capsule prevents any communications going to or coming from the Dragon capsule. You can see SpaceX engineers there on console monitoring Dragon's progress as it is autonomously steering itself to the Splashdown site off the coast of Florida. Once again, we're targeting a landing near Panama City in the Gulf of Mexico.
And a quite excited small crowd outside of Mission Control here at SpaceX. You can see them there awaiting the return of the 10th mission of crew members on board Dragon.
Yeah, and we're well underway with our second shift operations here at SpaceX headquarters. So we can see some folks, as you, can definitely see they're gathering, awaiting more views of. Oh, there's a beautiful shot. We can see that capsule now streaking through the night sky. I believe this camera view might be coming from the recovery vessel or from one of the aerial assets that we have in the area. We're now coming up to the end of the expected loss of signal. So we're now moving toward AOS, or acquisition of signal.
That's incredible.
And we should probably hear SpaceX core Michael Blasco start hailing.
Dragon, SpaceX, comm check.
We have you loud and clear.
Likewise, good to have you back. Expect automated chute deployment.
Dragon Cap.
All right, great news there. Those communications have been restored with the Axiom crew. The next event we have coming up.
GPS has converged. Expect nominal altitude for drogue chute deploy.
Copy. Nominal altitude for drogue chute deploy with GPS.
Now we expect those drogues to deploy when the Dragon capsule is around 18,000 feet in altitude. And we're roughly a minute and a half away from deployment. Another view coming to us from the WB-57 chaser plane. These are thermal images.
Brace for drogue window.
Now standing by for deployment of the drogue parachutes. These will be the first of 2 sets of parachutes that will deploy to help further slow down the Dragon capsule. Should see those drogue deploys. Those drogues deploy any second now. Looks like they're going now.
Visual on 2 healthy drogues.
Dragon copy. 2 healthy drogues.
All right. Great news there. Those 2 drogue parachutes have deployed. That helps to stabilize the Dragon capsule and provide that initial deceleration via parachute. Up next, we will have the main parachutes deploy. Vehicle velocity at main chute deployment is about 119 miles per hour, and they deploy between 6,500 and 6,000 feet. And there we can see those drogues pulling away, exposing the main parachutes. There are 4 main parachutes on the Dragon capsule, and it looks like those are now expanding, that reefing.
Main chute descent rate nominal.
And Dragon copies. Nominal chute.
Now this is a really cool view from the Dragon capsule. That's actually from the basin where the main parachutes.
1 kilometer.
1,000 meters, copy.
It's a view from where those main parachutes were just located. From this point on, we will hear Commander Peggy Whitson call out the altitude of the Dragon capsule. So we just heard her call out 1 kilometer, meaning 1 kilometer above the ocean surface.
$800.
Copy, 800.
So at this point in time, we can see we have 4 healthy main parachutes have deployed for the Axiom 2 crew. In a matter of minutes, they have gone from 17,500 miles per hour down to roughly now about 70 miles per hour.
600.
Copy,
Even less
600.
than that, when the main parachutes were deployed, they were going about 119 miles per hour. And by the time that they actually land in the water, it's about 10 miles per hour, thereabouts.
$400.
Copy, 400 meters.
$200. Crew is braced.
Copy, 200 and braced for splashdown.
Right, standing by for splashdown of the Axiom 2 crew.
AX2 is back on Earth.
As you can see on your screen, visual confirmation for splashdown of our Dragon spacecraft. Dragon Freedom has returned home with the AX2 crew.
SpaceX sees splashdown and mains cut. At this time, you are go for procedure 4.800.
And we're in that 4.800 splashdown.
SpaceX sees this.
We're in water uprighting.
SpaceX sees the same. Peggy, John, Ali, Rayana, on behalf of SpaceX, welcome home.
Well, in SpaceX, we would like to tell you that was a phenomenal ride. We really enjoyed all of it. You are the best.
As you can see on your screen, the SpaceX recovery team and vessels have been waiting for Dragon splashdown, which they made on time just 1 minute ago at 8:04 p.m. Pacific. They will now make their way to the splashdown location. The teams have been ready and waiting about 3 nautical miles away. So,
And SpaceX, Dragon, we feel like we're probably in stable 1.
Copy, stable 1.
all right, that communication there, just Commander Peggy Whitson basically estimating what position Dragon is in, depending on how it lands. Generally speaking, it lands upright, excuse me, which is we refer to as stable 1. But the teams will it'll take them about 30 minutes to make their way to our crew inside Dragon. As you can see there on your screen, recovery teams now making their way to the Dragon spacecraft. We are excitedly awaiting their recovery. Dragon has already autonomously completed several steps to safe itself following splashdown. We can see lots of bright lights there by the teams both in the water and in the air to help ensure that the recovery team can see what they're doing.
Absolutely. And for those of you just joining us, the return of AX-2 has gone smoothly so far. Dragon Freedom successfully re-entered the Earth's atmosphere, followed by deployment of its parachutes to slow the spacecraft down to a gentle 15 miles per hour. Dragon successfully splashed down in the Gulf of Mexico at 8:04 p.m. Pacific time, right on time, off the coast of Panama City, Florida, in the Gulf of Mexico, and we are now awaiting Dragon's recovery.
Yeah. Now, upon detection of landing, Dragon automatically releases the main parachutes, and that's to help prevent the wind from pulling on the spacecraft. The Dragon then automatically safes any pyrotechnics still present on the vehicle and may...
Dragon, SpaceX is go for recovery personnel to approach. Expect personnel alongside in approximately 1 minute.
We'll be expecting them. Thank you.
SpaceX core Michael Blasco just giving the crew a heads up that they can expect some folks to reach the Dragon capsule. So those are the fast boats that we see now approaching. The view that we have now is actually coming to us from our recovery vessel Megan, which is also making its way to the Dragon capsule, but it doesn't go as fast as the fast boats do, so it takes it a little bit longer. So at this point on, we will see the operations get closer and closer into view. But at this point in time, the astronauts remain seated and in their suits, and the onboard air conditioning keeps temperatures in check inside the spacecraft, and communication systems on board remain powered up. So as we just heard, the crew can continue to communicate.
That's right. And SpaceX has 2 fast boats in the recovery fleet. which have moved quickly to the splashdown point. They're being followed by Megan, as Kate just said, the main recovery vessel, which will move into position upwind of the spacecraft. The two fast boats have very specific roles. The first approach is focused on immediate safety inspection of the capsule integrity and checking for any presence of hypergolic propellant vapors, ensuring that it is safe for Megan to approach the Dragon spacecraft. Once the capsule is cleared for full approach, the team begins rigging the capsule for water recovery by the recovery ship. The second fast boat is responsible for parachute recovery.
Dragon, we're complete with 4.8 Henry.
Copy, 4.800 complete.
Great, just some more updates on nominal completion of the checklist. As I was saying, that second fast boat is responsible for parachute recovery and also serves as a redundant boat to the first.
And Dragon, requesting permission to come on board via the display camera view only. The display camera view only.
Yeah, you can come on board.
Copy, and work.
Permission granted from Commander Peggy Whitson there on the net. And then lastly, on the fast boat points, we'll see a team member on a jet ski helping to gather up the now detached parachutes.
Now, it'll take a little bit more than 10 minutes for the recovery crew to complete all those safety checks. And once those are complete, the team will begin preparing Dragon to be lifted into the recovery vessel. As part of the preparation for that lift, one member of the recovery team will climb on top of the capsule so they can attach Dragon's hoist rings and connect the lifting lines. It will take less than an hour to raise Dragon onto the recovery boat and remove the crew from the spacecraft. And then, after medical checkouts, the crew will return to the Cape by helicopter and be rejoined with their families.
That's great. I'd love to have the role of jumping.
Display camera is on board.
I would not like to have that role. I've said it on previous Splashdown webcasts, the individual responsible for jumping into the ocean at night sounds like a nightmare to me. So I have a lot of respect for the individuals that are trained and willing to do that job. It is an important job that is actually a very a highly technical role, as they have to go through a lot of training, excuse me, and they are also need to be able, have to know where they are allowed to step, and really how to attach the fittings, as I mentioned before, those hoist points for where Dragon will then be hooked into and lifted onto the recovery vessel. And we can see the Dragon capsule getting closer and closer into view as our recovery vessel, Megan, makes its way to the splashdown site.
Dragon, hypergol sweeps and unfired ordnance checks are nominal. Rigging is in progress. Approximately 25, that's 25 minutes until capsule lift. Stand by for PMC with SpaceX flight surgeon.
Dragon capsule.
All right, that was SpaceX Core, just letting the crew know that all of the unused pyrotechnics are saved, and that they will now begin to prepare the capsule for rigging. And that PMC that we heard stands for Private Medical Conference, so that will be the opportunity for each crew member to have a private conversation with the flight surgeon, just a quick check-in to make sure that everybody's feeling happy and healthy. We can see those other boats, the fast boats, as well as a jet ski, making their way around. They are collecting the parachutes out of the water. And we heard the call out just moments ago that the hypergolic tests, or the sniffs for that, just to make sure that there are no hypergolic fumes around the Dragon capsule, as they are poisonous to breathe. We want to make sure there aren't any there. Oh, that's actually our first live view of the backside of the recovery vessel, Megan. We can see recovery members there on the deck of the ship. That nest in the center is where Dragon will end up once we lift it out of the water.
Dragon to ground is now public.
Dragon copies.
Got a better view now of the recovery team there on the right-hand side, making their way, making progress with getting the Dragon capsule rigged and prepared for lifting out of the ocean and into the platform there on the left-hand side of your screen. One thing to look out for, given excuse me, the bright lights, that can attract bugs, which attracts fish, which sometimes attracts dolphins, as we have seen in previous night recoveries. Looks like there's a drone there above the recovery team on the right-hand side. So yeah, we might see some splashing in the water near where the recovery teams are. And we can actually now see there, that view on the right-hand side, the SpaceX recovery team member. Yeah, but now we got a full screen of that SpaceX recovery team member, really visible, climbing on the Dragon capsule. As I said before, this is a highly specialized and trained position within the recovery team. As the Dragon capsule, certain areas are wet as it just splashed down, and they have to ensure that the rigging and the hoist points are attached and secured to the Dragon capsule. The recovery vessel Megan making its way closer to the splashdown site. And it looks like the team on the right, in the recovery vessel to the right, was finishing. You can see there they are pulling the parachutes onto the boat. As I mentioned before, the physical evidence of that reentry phase now evident, visible, well, not right now, but it will be momentarily, that charring on the charring on the exterior of the capsule on that ablative material, or rather it's a thermal protection system. As the name implies, it helps protect the capsule during that atmospheric reentry. We can now see the recovery vessel Megan spinning and will begin to back into place towards the Dragon capsule. For those of you that have just joined us, the splashdown occurred at 11:04 p.m. Eastern Time, 8:04 Pacific Time, right on time. We heard that the weather conditions in this area were outstanding, and that certainly appears to be the case here, as we can see on screen. We can see the recovery team member on the bottom right, directing traffic, if you will, helping to guide the recovery vessel toward the splashdown site. Now, the structure that we see up and above the I thought we were going to get some comms there, but perhaps not. That lift that we actually see above those two recovery team members, that's a hydraulic lift that once we get closer to Dragon, it will actually push out a little bit and basically hover over.
Dragon, be advised, we are transitioning the forward link. Comm will be unavailable for approximately 5 minutes.
Dragon copy. Comment available 5 minutes.
Good read back.
As I was saying, that hydraulic lift will tip out over the back end of, or the aft end of the boat, and over the Dragon capsule. The recovery team member that is on the capsule will actually receive the lifting harnesses and cables and attach those. We will then see that team member, and one of my favorite parts to watch out for in the recovery process, that individual will just jump right off into the water, and will climb aboard one of the fast boats in the area. And in a matter of seconds, that hydraulic lift that we see there will lift and position the Dragon capsule up and out of the water and into that nest that we see there in the center of the deck. And that part really is the fastest part of recovery. And then once the Dragon capsule is in that nest then gets pulled forward, basically kind of under where the camera position is now, and toward the ship's deck. And that's where the SpaceX team and the flight surgeon will be standing by ready to open that side hatch after some more safety checks. And that will be a very exciting moment for the Axiom 2 crew. That will be with the reopening of that side hatch. Now, keep in mind, it's been closed since they took off from planet Earth 10 days ago. That side hatch has not been opened since before liftoff. So reopening that side hatch will be the first breath of Earth air, which in this case will be very humid and salty smelling, that they will have gotten in the last 10 days.
I love how we're still in their mission. In fact, they went through extensive water rescue training just for this moment. The Axiom crews train on the water rescue, and AX2 is no different. They had some pretty extensive water rescue training, so we're still in the mission.
Yeah, so this is a great view. We can really get a good glimpse of the SpaceX team member that is on board the capsule as it spins a little bit there.
Again, I volunteer for that position. Looks fun to me.
Yeah, it's a really tough position to have. As I said, they train a lot for it. And it's tough because they are in a wetsuit. And when you think about it, they are soaking wet when they try to climb up on top of the Dragon capsule.
Yeah.
They climb aboard from after hopping in the ocean. So yeah, like I said, they're soaking wet. They are, everything's really slippery. And they have to know exactly where they can grab a hold of to safely do their job.
Pretty amazing to think that just 12 hours ago, this crew was in space, was on the International Space Station, and now here they are, bobbing in the ocean. What a journey for AX2.
Absolutely. I mean, you could even say, even as little as an hour ago, they were still in space in microgravity. Yeah, so we see now one of those guidelines have been attached. And we can see them kind of orienting the capsule a little bit. This operation is highly choreographed, although it might look like a little bit of a traffic jam here and there, but it is highly rehearsed, and each team member has a specific, exactly what that job is. The recovery team practices both daytime and nighttime recoveries.
Dragon, forward link transition complete.
Dragon copy.
All right, so it sounds like comms with the crew now restored after they were just transitioning some of the communication links or loops that we have. And so I want to point out the individual that the recovery team member that is on the Dragon capsule is actually standing in the bay where those main parachutes have been housed for the entire mission. So that kind of gives you a sense of how large that storage compartment is. and how big those parachutes are. Even though they're packed very densely and tightly, all 4 of them do fit in.
And with those parachutes deployed, we've lost some weight and cargo in that sense, but we're still coming back with 300 pounds of science to process here on Earth, including our crew members and our 5th crew member, Gigi.
Yeah, one of the things that I've loved about this mission was it wasn't just a focus on STEM, it was a focus on STEAM, which for those that might not be familiar is science, technology, engineering, mathematics, but with the addition of arts, so STEAM instead of just STEM. And as a musician myself, I certainly...
Approximately 3 minutes until capsule lift.
Dragon copies, 3 minutes to lift.
Okay, the recovery teams are now preparing to lower the vessel's hydraulic lift mechanism into the water to bring the spacecraft into the on-deck translation system known as the nest, as Kate mentioned. Dragon will remain in the nest during the crew extraction and for the journey back into port. The capsule is currently just about to be lifted up, we think. We'll see it here in a second. It will be centered and then oriented on that nest. Dragon will then be translated into the hangar underneath the helipad aboard the ship so that we can open the hatch. And of course, once open, a SpaceX medical doctor will be the first one in to check on the crew to see if they're ready to egress out of the vehicle.
That's right. We can see that recovery team member still working to secure the harnessing to the capsule. Climbing like a highly skilled... There we go.
Dragon, brace for capsule lift.
Brace for capsule lift.
As I mentioned before, this will happen very quickly. This is one of the most efficient and quickest parts of the recovery process. So don't blink. You can see the fast boat now clearing the way for the lift. That lift now underway. We should now see that hydraulic lift actuate and pull it out of the water. There we go. It's a pretty cool view there of the heat shield on the underside. That's the side of the capsule that was basically facing Earth during re-entry. Those harnesses will now pull the bottom of the capsule, that heat shield, and align it for placement there in the nest. See some water sloshing around the bay where the main parachutes were held. All right, it looks like that has now settled almost into position.
I suppose the last dynamic movement of our cruise journey.
Almost. Once the capsule is placed in the nest will then move forward. It's almost like it grows tiny legs that are invisible and just scampers out of the camera view. But that will be the true last movement of the capsule prior to that side hatch opening. We can see now the recovery team members who you'll note have donned or put on some respiratory equipment. So right now they are plugging.
Dragon, welcome aboard the recovery vessel. Recovery personnel are completing final checks and stand by for translation to the egress platform.
Dragon copies.
So the reason that they're wearing respirators at the moment is that once the Dragon capsule has translated, as we just heard, to the platform on the inner side of the vessel, they will perform some additional hypergolic safety checks to ensure that there are no vapors or fumes remaining. But right now, we're actually just plugging up the thrusters to help ensure that none of those vapors will come out. And that's actually the deck where the Dragon capsule will slide into.
That final translation movement you
Exactly.
were talking about.
Dragon slide. So we can see those recovery team members now unlatching the safety cables and the harnesses that pulled Dragon up and out of the water and helped secure it into the position. Now it's hard to see, but we can still see the windows of the Dragon capsule. They're a little dirty at this point, but those are the two circular shapes on either side of the side hatch. And then we can see up above the side hatch is where those drogue parachutes were located. Also where some of that additional safety harnessing, that rigging is located. So once all of the service section Draco thrusters have been plugged, they are, and you can also kind of see some of it happening now. They're performing some of those hypergolic sniff checks. So the propellant the Dragon uses is different than the propellant that Falcon uses. Dragon's propellant is monomethyl hydrazine and nitrogen tetroxide, or MMH and NTO. And when they come into contact with each other, they instantaneously combust. So it's a great propellant for when you're on orbit, because you don't need an ignition source, which is good, because generally you don't want ignition sources in space. So these two propellants are great for on-orbit operations, but they are toxic to breathe. So that's why we were taking these extra steps, because Dragon had a lot of those two propellants on board. And even as recently as an hour ago, some of those Draco thrusters were firing. So just ensuring that none of those fumes are present.
I think we saw a thumbs up from someone doing those hypergolic checks as they were walking away.
For those of you that have just recently tuned in, we had a on-time splashdown at 11:04 p.m. Eastern Time, 8:04 p.m. Pacific Time. The Dragon capsule has been lifted out of the water. They landed near Panama City, Florida, in the Gulf Coast. So it's been lifted out. The astronauts, I'm getting ahead of myself, the Dragon capsule in just moments from now will be moved or translated just out of camera view. We have another camera view and we'll be able to see it there, but it will be slid into position near the deck where the crew will be able to egress from the side hatch. And then once that side hatch is open, that will be the Axiom 2 crew's first breath of fresh air since they boarded Falcon 9 at the start of their mission back on May 21st, which was just 10 days ago. So we're now standing by for translation of the Dragon capsule, which will put it into position to open the side hatch after undergoing additional hypergolic checks and spacecraft cabin pressurization. So before opening the side hatch, we have to make sure that the environment inside of the spacecraft equalizes or is the same with the outside environment. So we can just barely make out the recovery team making their final preparations before sliding the Dragon capsule into position. Recovery operations are to me personally, really fascinating, or I should say re-entry and recovery, because it's a lot of, it goes really fast and then it goes really slow. So, you know, all of the steps departing the International Space Station and we can see that the Dragon capsule is now being translated toward the forward end of the vessel's deck. Once again, this is our recovery vessel, Megan, which services our Gulf landing sites. Another camera view there, seeing it move into position. As I mentioned, all the recovery team members wearing those personal respirators to help ensure that if there are any remaining hypergolic fumes, that they don't come into contact with them, as they are right next to the capsule. Beginning to spray down the capsule to try and flush out some of that salt water. All right, we're going to use this ladder to climb towards the top to do some more of those hypergolic checkouts. As I mentioned before, that side hatch is where the Axiom 2 crew will egress from.
Dragon, stand by for side hatch opening and egress.
Dragon, standing by.
All right, we can see the recovery team now taking off their personal protective equipment, or PPE. They can get rid of those respirators as the hypergolic checkouts have cleared. You can really see the the different colors now of the side of Dragon. You know, just a little bit ago it was all white. Now that evidence of re-entry. I always love being able to see the heat shield as the Dragon comes up and out of the water. All right, we can see that the recovery team is now opening the side hatch.
There it is.
This is the first breath of fresh air, in this case, salty air, for the Axiom 2 crew since climbing on board Falcon 9 just 10 days ago. So the first person in is the medical officer doing checks with the crew members to ensure that everyone is doing all right. I see some thumbs up and waving.
See some waving from Rihanna Barnawi there on the left. The first photos being taken there. I think they're getting the seal of the hatch, but glad to see our crew's already waving for their photo op.
So just out of view, there's that plastic. I shouldn't say it's plastic, but I'm not quite sure what it's made out of, but that fixture will actually help protect the side hatch as the crew egresses. So as I mentioned before, we reuse our Dragon capsules. This is actually the second time that this capsule has been to space. And that fixture helps protect elements of the side hatch from damage as the crew steps out. You know, they are coming back from a little bit of time in space, and we want to assure that everybody stays safe, so we will be partially assisting them out of the capsule, but also just helps to ensure the integrity of the hardware.
All right. First view of our crew. AX2. Happy waves and holding hands all around. That's wonderful to see. Nearing 10 days on orbit, and the crew is nearly ready to egress through that side hatch.
You can see the team putting that protective fixture in place, also starting to gather the crew's items. Those are the tablets that they wore around their legs. And we can see the folks on the edge, the left-hand side of your screen, following along with our procedures, documenting what is coming out of the capsule to make sure everything is accounted for. Once again, this fixture that they're putting into place just helps ensure that the side hatch remains protected while the crew is coming out. They used a similar fixture while the crew was ingressing as well. And that looks like one of the footrests or boot rests coming off of one of the crew's seats. It's helpful to remove all four of these just to help get a little extra space inside the capsule. Right, we can see SpaceX recovery members there putting in place the slide that the Axiom 2 crew will utilize to make their way out of the capsule, or egress is exit. Since they've spent the last couple of days, last few days, not couple, last 10 days in space, the effects of microgravity, even for that period of time, can be felt. So to ensure their safety, we will help them slide out of the capsule. But I have a feeling that we'll also see big smiles and some happy waves at the same time.
Definitely.
Although I could imagine this moment is somewhat bittersweet because, they are back home, but that also means that they're not in space anymore. This is a feeling that Commander Peggy Whitson has experienced so many times.
Yeah.
I just love that she was able to extend her record. She's now at 674 days in space, which is just incredible. But yeah, this must be a bittersweet moment, knowing you're home, you get to see your family soon, but the ride to space is now over.
I think I heard Peggy in an interview after her NASA retirement say, she was asked, "What are you going to do now?" And she said, "I'd like to go back to space." And she certainly did. I'm sure the families of our AX2 crew are eagerly awaiting this moment to see their loved one pop out of the side hatch. And even more so to have them land in their arms and pass those hugs around, do all those handshakes and high fives.
Mm-hmm. We're now standing by for crew egress, where they will make their way out of their seats and exit the Dragon capsule. As I mentioned before, the side hatch, which we can see now open. The last time this was opened was when the crew had ingressed into the capsule, so it was closed and locked prior to liftoff and has remained there. The crew utilized the forward hatch, which is the hatch out of picture right now. It's located at the top, or the forward end of the capsule. And that is the hatch that is utilized to dock with the International Space Station. So all the trips that they did while on the ISS were through that forward hatch that we are unable to see at the moment, as it's covered up by the nose cone, and just that nose cone out of picture here. Okay, it looks like we might be close to seeing our first crew member.
Yes. Starting to see our first crew member egress from SpaceX Dragon vehicle. Who is that? Is that?
I think that might be Peggy.
That does look like Peggy. Commander Peggy Whitson seems to have egressed the vehicle.
It's pretty impressive that she was able to, she had assistants standing up, but, basically just walked right off. That's really impressive.
I'd say her vestibular system is pretty well trained at this point.
Really set the bar high for everyone else coming after her. I wouldn't want to do that. All right, we got legs of our second crew member.
If they're removing from the center, I'm going to wager that it's our pilot, John Schaffner, but we will see.
Generally speaking, it is easier to have the two crew members in seats 2 and 3. So generally the commander and the pilot egress first.
Right. And that does look like our pilot, John Schaffner.
So at this point in time, 2 of the 4 Axiom 2 crew members have egressed from the capsule. Standing by for egress of our 2 mission specialists. Now removing the footrests of those 2 other seats. Once again, this helps to make some additional room to move around and climb out. Or rather, slide out, I should say.
And actually, on the right there is Axiom's flight surgeon, our lead AX2 flight surgeon, Michelle Hong, assisting our mission specialist.
That looks like Rayana.
Rayana Barnawi, egressing a Dragon capsule. Little help up.
Yay! Nice little photo opportunity.
A little celebration right there.
Again, super impressive to me that these crew members are just walking off after being helped up. So now with Rayana having exited, all that's left is Ali Al-Karni, our other mission specialist, who was sitting on the far right-hand side.
And our flight surgeon, Michelle Hong, will actually be accompanying our crew all the way back to Houston, keeping an eye on them the whole time. See the feet now of our final crew members starting to egress the hatch, through the hatch. Ali Al-Karni making his egress from Dragon Freedom. Pausing for a little photo there. That's great. Well, this crew looked like all smiles coming out of that capsule.
And now that our crew are safely back home on Earth and getting the first checkouts by our medical team on board, we're going to wrap up our live coverage of their historic return. For those of you that didn't have a chance to follow along, the AX-2 crew lifted off from Launch Pad 39A on Sunday, May 21st, and arrived at the International Space Station about 15 and a half hours later, which marked Dragon's fastest launch to docking time for a human spaceflight mission. They spent a total of 10 days in space, 8 days on the ISS before undocking just over 12 hours ago. And more recently, at 8:04 p.m. Pacific time, they splashed down off the coast of Florida at Panama City, just in time to celebrate 3 years of human space flights for SpaceX, marking 3 years since the launch of DM2.
That's so great. And what an incredible journey this has been. Next up, they'll catch a helicopter flight back to shore, where they will transfer to a waiting aircraft ready to take them to Houston. While this concludes the flight portion of the AX-2 mission, much of the research portfolios that were performed on station will continue to be reviewed and analyzed. Some of their studies will even continue over the coming days and months. Well, Kate, it has been an absolute pleasure sharing this desk with you, and both for the launch of AX-2 back on May 21st and now Splashdown today. So to SpaceX, thank you for an incredible flight and taking such great care of our crew. And to all of you watching, it's been an honor and a privilege to share the journey of Peggy, John, Ali, and Rayana to space and back again. As we bring this mission to a close, we celebrate how the AX-2 mission is demonstrating that the opportunities presented in microgravity are moving beyond the partners of the ISS to include more countries, institutions, industries, and individuals than ever before. This is how Axiom Space is expanding access to low Earth orbit and building history, as we like to say. Be sure to check out axiomspace.com as we continue to pursue new commercial opportunities for human spaceflight. I'm Duke Brady here with SpaceX's Kate Tice, and we're signing off now with a final welcome home to the crew of AX-2.
Thanks to you, Duke, as well as everyone else for joining us, and we'll see you soon.